All right, we are live, episode 2. This is February 18th, 2022. What's on the docket? Other than your dinner. Man, are we going to do this? How much more Chinese food do you have to get through?
You can hear me chewing?
I mean, I hear your silverware on your plate. You're eating, it's clear. But if you had to eat, just be like, let's do this later. Although I'm glad we're testing this out.
No, I have
Low blood sugar?
I have debauchery at 8. No, let's go. Come on.
No, seriously, we're gonna listen to you chew this episode? That's fine. This will be the episode where Paul eats. All right. Number 1, what is unchristian?
Right, like, so, you know what? This becomes a dead-end street. Well, not a dead-end street, but...
Whatever. We drive down dead-end streets. Maybe some kids got to take some naps in the back seat.
Beating a dead horse. It's like, because there's so many different... Because anybody can say whatever the fuck they want, right? Like, it's almost like being a Giants fan. Like, Eli Manning's the best. No, he's not. But like, oh, Jesus would never do that. Jesus, blah, blah, blah. Bro, if Jesus gives the Bible a thumbs up, then how do you cherry pick half the shit that he said that was halfway decent that a monkey would know, right? Oh, don't punch anybody and be nice, I guess.
That's the 11th and 12th commandments.
There's nothing amazing, right? Like, what did he say that a monkey doesn't know?
I mean, a monkey is hyperbole, but I get your point. Yeah.
No. There have been studies. Monkeys have severe empathy, bro. Like, they are really, really good at saying, you know what? I'm fine. This other monkey is hurting physically or emotionally. They give hugs. They protect other monkeys. Monkeys would know.
They let them finish their Chinese food on a podcast. Okay, yeah. So, what made you think of what is unchristian?
What made me think what was unchristian? A video of somebody saying...
By the way, it's totally evident that food's in your mouth as you're trying to answer me, but continue.
Why are you telling the audience this? Okay, anyway, sorry.
Some video.
No, forget about some video. When people say shit like, yo, that's not very Christian of you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, like, it's also very Christian of me to rape your daughter. And then give you 50 shekels.
And she's got to marry me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. Dead-end street, cul-de-sac. We drove around. We looked at the 5 houses in the bend. Yeah, and you know what? That kind of goes back to a little of what we covered in the first episode, where it's whatever the person says, right?
Yeah, and that's really my only point. That when anybody's arguing with a person and they say that's very unchristian, like even newscasters or politicians, like when they talk to Christians, they're like, hey, that's not very Christian of you. That means you're giving them the high ground. Right? You're ceding high ground to these people because you're saying, hey, Christians are actually pretty awesome. Like, try to be like them. No, guy. No. You're wrong, Colonel Sanders.
It's not only that, but again, I just mean it's unchristian to you. It's your definition of Christianity, hyphenated long word, right? Like, what's unchristian to you is different than what's unchristian to a Pentecostal, or what's unchristian to a Lutheran, or it's unchristian for a Baptist to drink, right? That's a big joke. Yeah. So there is no...
Right. I think you and I are coming to it from two different angles. We're saying, the same thing, but literally from the opposite angles. When people say
no, I'm just adding on. I totally agree with your points,
okay.
right?
Okay.
Right, like it's senseless. It's senseless to say that what is Christian is good. I'm with you there.
Okay.
I'm also just saying, like, there's no universal definition of what is Christian, and therefore there's no universal definition of what is unchristian. All right, number 2, cherry picking the past.
Right, and that kind of just goes with the same shit, to be honest. Like, this all flows from the same video. I was dumb enough to, because I forgot what I watched, but I was dumb enough to search, Christianity and slavery or something like that. Just as literally Christianity and slavery.
Okay.
And the video that came up with just a whole bunch of black people trying to say, yo, those were bad people who used religion the wrong way.
Wow. You know what? Big callback to first episode again with the Mormon guy being like, no, you used it wrong. This is a tool, and if you use it the wrong way, you can sound stupid.
Anyway, it just got me angry because my whole stance on black people and slavery, but like, these were black people who were trying to say, yo, this dude literally was saying shit like, a lot of the slaves were Christian before they even came to America.
Wow.
But he was saying it as if it was like a powerful thing. Like, yo, we had Christianity before slavery.
No, and it's, right, that's the entire justification, right? Because the more reasonable finding is that that's exactly how black people in America came to Christianity, was through slavery, right? Through being enslaved. And that's, again, going back to what we said, right? Like, it's looking at a situation and then backing into something that helps you make sense. It's mental gymnastics, right? Like, it's trying to say, like, well, it would be better if we could at least find one example where someone was Christian prior to being enslaved. And then it's like, oh, you see, we were there before, and that's not how we got it, and therefore we can still call this an awful thing, right? Because if you say, I got Christianity from this awful thing that happened to my ancestors, then it's like, why would you even consider it? Why would you even hold on to this? But it allows them to hold on to Christianity because they can separate it. No?
Right? Because wait, where did you get Christianity from? This motherfucker said, remember, Joseph and Mary fled to Africa.
No.
The fuck is that? And your point is, fuckface? Did they flee to Africa and stay there and be like, you know what? We just realized Jesus is black and he belongs with his basketball team. Like, what? I don't even know what your point is. And wait, so if you were Christian and he still allowed you to be enslaved, why is this a positive in your brain?
Yeah.
The fact that they can find solace in that is probably one of the scariest, most disgusting parts of this interaction, right? Like, they find solace in knowing, like what you said. So that's why I'm like, I love debating people, because the strategy and the feeling people out and the blah, 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 because you don't give your opponent anything. Listen way more than you talk. Because what that person is doing, to your point, they're only refuting this one slither of argument. Well, black people got Christianity from their slave masters in North Carolina. No, they didn't. They got it from them in Tennessee. Praise Jesus. It's like, oh, so now that we're in a different zip code, it totally changes the premise?
Checkmate.
Like, I don't get it, bro. But I do get it. You're fucking brain dead. You're delusional.
Yeah, again, mental
Actually,
gymnastics.
you're not even delusional. So delusional is believing in the actual tenets of the Bible. This is just a level of self-hatred that I can't fathom. Like, you have to hate yourself. You have to really hate yourself. And then saying that Christianity isn't European. What the fuck are you talking about? Bro, that Bible was not written in any African language for hundreds of years. Then the fucker was saying shit like, yeah, St. Augustine was in Egypt that whole time, was in Alexandria that whole time. So because a Greek dude was physically in Africa, probably not treating Africans with a modicum of respect, you're attaching Christianity to that Africanism. Like, it's bad, bro. It's bad, and that's how you get to the point where you won't even advocate for yourself, because you literally are on the other team.
Yeah, it's sad. Selective reasoning, mental gymnastics.
Anyway, like I said, it was dumb for me to even do that search.
All right, you want to go through the rest of the points you cited on that video?
What was it? Probably not, but what was it?
The ignorance of the people are the masses' asses. Where are the abolitionists? How did they turn from freedom fighters to apathetic bystanders who benefit from injustice?
Right. So that is something I do want to touch on, right? Because when they say stuff like Christians, most of the abolitionists were Christians. And their faith in God is what turned them to fight slavery. Well, number one, did they have did they not have faith in God for those first 200 years? And number two, what happened after slavery ended? Were you still fighting for Africans, or were you like, oh, job done, slavery's dead, now let's go beat up some blacks? Because black people still were getting their ass whipped from 1865 on.
Yeah.
So what happened? You know what I mean? Like, that's like rescuing I hate equating, people of African descent in this country to children, but it's like rescuing anything from a burning building or like a really bad situation. And then once they get out of that situation, you then treat them poorly at the very best.
It's like the pro-life position.
Very similar. Very similar.
I just wanted you to make it out. The rest you have to deal with.
But the difference there is, like you're saying, that you have a shot. White people in 1890 knew unequivocally and were very comfortable. I cannot think that there were a majority or a plethora of white people in this country who were like, man, I really wish black people could compete for my job.
Yeah.
They were probably happy that black people could get a job. Like when you were a porter or a fucking barber or a fucking shoe shine or a janitor, that was a reputable profession for a person of color. And those abolitionists or the descendants thereof, they hung their hats on that shit. Just like it shouldn't take you until 1920 for women to vote. The fuck were you doing in 1776?
Thinking it wasn't okay.
Right. And in 1920, you didn't think it was okay. You just knew that you kind of had to do it. You know what you're doing is wrong. It's whether or not you have to give up power and money and control. This is so once again, as always, this is not really a black and white thing. It happens to be a black and white thing because that's what we're talking about. But this is a man-woman thing. This is a rich-poor thing. This is a power versus non-power thing. People with power very rarely realize, oh shit, I got all this shit and this person next to me doesn't. And not because they're not smart or they're not trying. It's because they're black, they're Mexican, they're a woman, they're trans, they're whatever. I don't know. So I don't know, we laugh and joke about not being on this planet, but I genuinely don't relate to people. I get mad. I talk to people who very much share my passion, very much share my sensibilities, but they don't share my, for lack of a better word, conviction. I don't know if that's really the right word, but like they say, oh yeah, we've made a ton of progress. No. Bro, it's like inflation. If you make $50 more, but the price of everything has gone up, and I'm not going to do the math, right? But you make 5% more today, but the price of everything has gone up 7%, you're not doing better, sir. And if you don't have the wherewithal to understand that calculation or understand what goes into your life as a person in a society, then you're gonna ignorantly come to the conclusion that, oh no, we're making progress. Look at all these black people making millions of dollars, right? But look at all these black people still getting shot, and nobody does anything about it. Like, that's not what you were fighting for 200 years ago, right? Like 200 years ago, you weren't fighting for more money. You were fighting for your own personal sovereignty. You were fighting for the right to walk around and not be raped, murdered, robbed, whatever, and to have equal protection under the law. That the people who wear badges and make legal decisions are going to treat you the same way they would treat anybody else. And that's still not the fucking case. And so if you're willing to take some money to shut the fuck up, then just admit that. Admit that, yo, more black people make more money today than they made yesterday, so we're winning. Okay, if that's what you consider winning, if that's what you consider progress, cool. But the truth of the matter is, and it blows my mind to read these type of fucking stories when, bro, there were black professors in the 1800s. There were black people being a professor at a fucking university. Lawyers, doctors, businessmen, inventors, scientists. Like, that shit is amazing. There'll always be extraordinary black people doing shit. There'll always be extraordinary everybody doing shit. But you can't use that as the barometer, because that's not a really good gauge, right? Because there's just more people and there's more money to go around. What is it, like nominal, right? Like that's nominal. Where it's in line with the changes within the equation versus real. It what's the word I'm looking for? Transcends the factors around it. Like with income, your salary and inflation. If your salary is in line with inflation or it lags inflation, then you may make more money, but you can't do more with the money that you make.
Yeah, it reminds me, I don't think it's the best parallel, because it probably works as an analog for other elements of people who are disenfranchised, but the graphic of equity versus equality, where equality it's people standing at a fence who are different heights. One of them might be a kid or something, and if everyone gets the same size, whatever, basket or box or something to stand on, that's equality, but still not everybody can see above the top of the fence. Whereas equity would be making sure that, if someone needs 2 boxes, they have 2 boxes to see over the fence. But yeah, and to your point, just because you got a box doesn't mean you made progress.
So yeah, I would say that that's always a problematic one for me, because the question is, why do you need 2 boxes?
Yeah, I didn't even mean, right, again, because that's probably the formal analogy to use it in, but I just meant the fact that you could be handed a box, and I'm equating that to your mention of getting a 5% raise where, goods and services are still 7% more than they were before you got the 5% raise. You can't look at that and say, just because I got the box or just because I got the 5% raise, that I'm better off. Like, you may be no better off than you were.
Right, but the only problem with that analogy, paradigm, whatever you want to call it, is that there's a comparison, right? And I'm not comparing 2 people to one another. I'm just comparing a person to their circumstances.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Actually, I think I said something about that in my text, did I?
What else do you do here? Why is faith inherently positive? Religion versus spirituality. No, not in that one text. You don't say anything else about that.
I'm sorry. What I thought I was going to write is, I forgot what the dude said, but watching something on the Young Turks, and sometimes they go a little overboard, right? They say things that are not really fair, and I think it gives us not us, it gives them, i.e. the enemy, whoever is bigoted and unjust. It gives them some ammunition, so to speak. And it was something like, it was just kind of like, what was I saying? Oh, so, and it was one example, but it happened 3 or 4 different times in the same video with different examples. But one example was, they showed a Proud Boy getting a fist bump from a police officer at a rally or some type of protest, right? And they made it seem like, oh, wow, look at the police cavorting with, dangerous mongrels. When, yeah, the Proud Boys are pretty despicable, but you don't know, that photo doesn't prove that cop condones what the Proud Boys do, or that one individual was doing something illegal while the cop kind of said, good job, right? Because we could easily see a cop giving a Black Lives Matter person a fist bump, and what conclusion should we come to there?
Yeah, that's fair.
Just situations like that where, like, I'm not even sure what you're trying to prove here, and all you're doing is weakening our point by doing silly, dumb shit like making that a point when it's not.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great point. Like, a photograph is literally it's not even a moment in time, right? Like, it's a moment between moments. It's an exact point in time, and you don't know what happened before, you don't know what happened afterwards. Literally, like, on either side of that. I like that. I like that takeaway. Don't draw conclusions from still photographs.
Yeah, I'm good. You got anything?
Just looking through the rest of your stuff here. Ex-Georgia official Robin Folsom wore fake pregnancy stomach in paid leave scheme.
Woohoo! Pimps up, hoes down.
This is the New York Post. Robin Folsom, 43, also allegedly made up a fake baby daddy to send an email to her bosses that she was under doctor's orders for several weeks of bed rest after giving birth in May 2021. The Georgia Office of the Inspector General announced this week. So is this all for time off?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Jeez.
Bro, this is not somebody who works in the mines.
Right?
Like, like, you don't swing a hammer all day. She probably wants time off to fucking take a trip to the Maldives or something.
I hear they're nice this time of year. Wow, man, that's ballsy.
How fucking crazy is that?
Yeah. You gotta hate your job. Or really have something to do for 6 months. Like you said, a tropical vacation. Oh, bro, the best. Jesus Christ!
Oh my god.
This guy is...
Somehow, wait, we have to play that somehow.
I'm gonna get it in here. There's no way I'm gonna lo-fi audio this thing. That was... I didn't know he went on to a successful music career. He's got music videos and everything.
A couple of pastors had him out to their church.
He is so into it.
Right, so that is super. Like, unlike the Asian dude, that dude to me is real.
Hold on. Okay. No. I need you to define both of these cases, right? So calling back to our listeners who haven't heard the first episode, we're talking about a guy on a British talk show who was formerly a gangster. He is Asian, and went to prison, found God through what everyone else is calling a hallucination, right? He said he heard the voice of God. He simultaneously felt 2 emotions. He felt joy and he felt sadness, right? So there's this guy, and then there's, what do we call this guy? Do we know his name? Mike Servin? What's his name?
I don't know.
I'm going to find this dude's name right now. His name is Mike Servin.
Okay.
He goes by Gangster Cholo Jesus Chroist. Chroist. No, he doesn't go by that. This is knowyourmeme.com. That's awesome. Okay, so those are the two characters. Who's what? What are you saying? Who's real? Who's what? What's the opposite? Delusional?
No. My personal opinion is that Mike Servin, and maybe this is more of a backhanded, not compliment, but a disrespect to him, because
It's just a backhand. It's just a straight backhand.
maybe I'm just saying that he's too dumb to know the difference. Where I feel like that Asian dude used that while he was in jail for whatever reason, and he also knows that if he says I love Jesus and I do this, that people are not going to look at his criminal career as deeply or in the same way.
Why do you not think the same of Mike Servin?
I don't know that Mike Servin has done anything wrong.
Oh, I thought that was part of his deal.
No.
All right, let's find that out too.
Maybe that's just because you're a racist.
Calm down.
Why are you assuming a Mexican did something wrong, Abdul?
Just a moment, Paul.
You notice he won't answer the question, listeners.
Just remember who controls the editing room.
Permission to treat the witness as hostile. Now you're trying to find Mike Servin's criminal record. Like, what's going on here? It's like a witch hunt.
No, because he had said it before.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. And obviously he doesn't say it in the video that you sent, right? So that's why we're out of context. Yeah. Oh my God, bro, you got to check out this dude's website. Holy shit, I can't find punctuation.
Mike Servin?
Yeah, I'm going to try to read this in one breath. This is in the middle of this bio paragraph here, where there's a few sentences with punctuation, and then there's this monstrosity. So growing up, I'm this gang member. My dad dies of sourness of the liver when I'm 17, and my friend gets shot and killed when I was about 17 by gang violence. And when my friend died, it became so real it wasn't a game trying to become what I felt was cool. It became real, but Satan had me blind. I was fine with that because at the time I was like, that's what we do. People die. Then I go to prison in 1999 for... Wait, is this lyrics to one of his jams?
Bro, this is his, remember Eminem's movie, 8 Mile?
It really is. For 2.5 years, and my brother and a couple of friends, I couldn't get through that without taking a breath. Kudos to anybody that tries. I get out July 2nd, 2001. Yeah, he had talked about this in videos. That's so... No, I was not assuming. Sorry if it sounded that way. Yeah, so, okay, so now knowing that, would you put the same on him that... I mean, let's be clear, are you saying like it's just maybe an act part of it, at least for the guy on the British talk show?
So, forget about these two characters for the moment. I'm not backing away from my statement, but what I'm saying is sometimes you meet somebody and you realize, so you know that there are pastors out there who know for a fact that the Bible is bullshit, there is no God, blah, 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 and they're using it as a cash fucking ATM machine, right? And then you have people who genuinely believe that shit, and they're out there doing almost the exact same thing, but they genuinely believe it.
So is that what you're saying? That when you look at Mike Servin, you just look like he's in deep. He genuinely believes
He's
that.
well enough to believe this, yes.
Yeah, if it was, if we're talking gradient or spectrum and where they are on a sliding scale, I agree with you. But I don't put it past the Asian guy on the British talk show to really believe everything he was saying. I mean, he told me I wasn't allowed to say anything until I felt two emotions at the same time.
Which is what makes me think he's full of shit.
You think that's just like a shut down the conversation?
I think he thinks that makes sense because he's been like shutting people down with that monstrosity of stupidity for a long time. Right? Like when he's talking to stupid people, and this is not really an argument for the difference between him and Mike, but when you're not that bright, and I'm not saying he's smart, I'm just saying Mike Servin might be a little bit more susceptible or gullible, but when you're not that bright...
Now who's racist?
What do you mean?
Why can't he be as bright?
No, I said I'm not saying he's dumber, I'm saying he's just more gullible. Now who's racist?
I thought you just said when you're not that bright. You literally just said when you're not that bright. I said, why can't he be as bright?
Wait, stop. When I said when you're not that bright, I'm literally talking about the Asian guy. The Asian guy is the not that bright guy.
Okay.
No. Stop, Abdul. For real. No. Stop. So seriously, because your laughter is going to make people think that you caught me and you didn't, right?
We can. He's worried about getting caught. No, we can cut all this. That's fine. But
No.
Go ahead.
Cut this. I want them to know the real you. And so what I'm saying is, when you're not that bright, like I think that the gangster, let's call him the gangster. Well, no, they're both gangsters, right?
Exactly.
So the Asian gangster, I think, and obviously it's just extreme extrapolation, right? When you're not that bright and you start to talk to people who believe in God, you start to, like, almost anything you say is okay, right? It's reasonable because you believe in God. And so you get this level of confidence. Once again, this is not an argument for the juxtaposition between him and the other guy. I'm just saying that in general, the power and the comfort and the confidence that comes with speaking to other people, like it's like, oh, we both speak Spanish. Now, when I can say shit, you kind of give it a little bit more respect because you don't want to talk to people who speak English. And I think people who speak, religion, and I've told you that there have been tons of times when, like, a Christian woman will say, I want a Christian man on her profile. And then when I say I'm atheist, she's like, well, I mean, it'd be different if you were Muslim. But it's like, wait, you just said you wanted a Christian man. Like, they literally would rather have a Muslim than an atheist. And I think there's a lot of power in that community of, yo, we're both Christian, we both believe in Jesus. Now I'm going to say, Jesus tied my shoe this morning. Like, no, he really did tie my shoe.
I think that I kind of lost my way through all of that, but just touching on your last point, I actually think that's just more of a stigma of atheism and atheists than I'm willing to go diet Christian or Christian light with a Muslim.
No. That was my point, right? That was my comparison, right? The fact that when let's just say it's me, you, and Steve, and you and I are Christian, any idea that Steve comes up with is going to be diminished by the fact that he's not a Christian, right? I come to you with a stupid idea. Steve comes to you with a smart idea. You're more apt to go with my idea because the thing that's so important to you, we share. And so you will kind of just have a deference towards me that, doesn't particularly make sense. And the reason I'm saying all this is because I think that when the Asian guy can say, how do you explain having two emotions at the same time and thinking he just threw a Rubik's Cube at your face? Right? Like, he genuinely thinks, got him, right? Like, he really thinks, I just may have converted him. But that's because you're so dumb, because that's why I said it makes you dumber. Religion, what did I say? It rots the brain
and corrupts morality.
Like, it makes you dumber, right? Because you have to turn your brain off. Because everywhere you go, if your brain was on, then you would be blowing up. You'd be stepping on landmines.
Yeah, I actually look at that a different way. I think we end up saying the same thing, but it's the God of the gaps, right? When you walk around with that as your construct for the universe, there's no need to ever have an I don't know answer, right? You just back into that, right? The flowchart may look different from different answers, right? So how do I get to this point about this rock and the way it looks? And you just go, oh yeah, that's how God intended it to look, right? So there's no concern about the in-between of how it may have really come about, and that possibly ending up at a place where you don't know, or you go so far, but we don't really know beyond that, right? It's just, everything leads back to God. Yeah, and then because of that, you're saying, yeah, it makes you dumber. And again, going back to what I said in the first episode, I'd really like to avoid alienating people, but That's what I focus on when I talk about that. It's really just when you walk around and that is your rubric for everything. You feel like you have all the answers. You're confident that there's nothing you won't know. Everything is explainable by God, or by God as being the answer. It makes you understand less.
So you don't think saying you're an atheist alienates people?
No, it certainly would. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you're saying you don't want to further alienate somebody by, once again. So,
Well, I mean, sorry. Let's be clear
Good
here.
example.
Are you talking about? Because in my personal life, I don't. It almost never comes up.
right. But if somebody, right. But in this hypothetical situation, we're talking about the fact that you're talking about religion to somebody, and you're telling them, like, they come to you and they say, "Hey, Abdul, you know."
Yeah, no, if you mean the example I just gave where I say, hey, no, what you're doing is, you're just starting with God as the answer and you're trying to back into it. I rarely, if ever, have had that conversation. Honestly.
I understand that. Right. Because you avoid them. But what I'm saying to you is this conversation or this stance that you're taking is only meaningful if you ever get into these conversations.
Yeah, but I mean, hence the point of this podcast, right? Like we can have this
No.
conversation.
I'm not judging the fact that you should be saying this to anybody. I don't care if you have this conversation with anybody. What I'm saying is, in this hypothetical situation, when you're talking to somebody and you're trying not to alienate them, how are you honest with asinine assertions like, hey, like when you were, I was gonna say something personal, but you were doing a upgrade to your house very recently, and if that person was like, listen, you need to pray on it, don't do nothing but pray on it.
Who are we talking about, the contractor? Or I mean, I guess it doesn't matter if that's what they say, but I'm just trying to get this hypothetical exactly right.
They're telling you to pray that the person comes back and they give you a good price that fits into your budget, or
okay, so any third party that understands
some zoning situation. No. This is not the contractor. This is like your friend.
Yeah. Okay.
About the contractor, or about somebody who has to do some work, or the municipality has to come back with a judgment on whether or not you can put 2 more feet of piping or whatever the hell, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so when they tell you to pray on it, what do you just say? Thanks, I will.
Yeah. No, honestly, I would like nod my head and move on.
Right. So then, who gives a shit what your opinion is when you never put yourself in that position? It's like, yo, if anybody ever steps on my shoe, I'll punch them in their face. And the people stepping in your shoe is, oh, he ain't really want to step on my shoe. That don't really count. And I'm not calling you a chump, because
that's very specifically what you just did.
I apologize. You're right, but it was a good analogy with hit too close to home type of whatever.
No, I think it's fair, and it's a great topic again, because that's why I raised that about the example you gave. It's more to me about the stigma of atheism and atheists, stigma about atheism and atheists as being less than, I guess, right? Like that's what we're saying. Yeah, I'm more worried about that, right? Causing that to make someone feel a certain way, right? And then obviously alienating me from any or whatever, I end up being ostracized. So yeah, it is something that I don't announce and I avoid.
Do you not see that you're a free rider? We've had that conversation, right? And you know about the free rider effect, right?
No.
We've never had that conversation? That's our next episode, bro.
I don't know.
Game theory, free rider, it goes all into one, for me at least. But you're a free rider in the sense that you would love, I'm not going to say that you would love for religion to go away or whatever, but you just want religious people to be more honest, more objective, right? Correct?
Do I want religion to go away? I wouldn't use that wording, right? Because I think people would conjure up images of like making religion go away. But yeah, I want each individual to be able to honestly...
Want to conjure up? That's not what I said, but go ahead.
I want every individual to honestly assess the possibility. and I guess it's silly for me to say that too, because I think it's obvious, right? Like I think if you really think about it and you're honest about it, you won't come to the conclusion that there is a God or there is anything supernatural, right? Very much along the lines of what the atheist experience talks about. Like I just want people to not believe things without evidence, period, right? Like as long as you can get there and understand what evidence is. But anyway, sorry, you were going somewhere with that.
Right. The free
rider.
For you is that you want, at the very least, for everybody to be way more objective, way more reasonable and rational in their decision making and stuff, and get to the point where nobody looks at atheists as less than, correct?
Yeah, that would be great.
But you're not willing to do any work about it because you're going to run from that fucking confrontation.
Yeah, but again, you and I disagree about, again,
No, we're not talking about how right now. We're just talking about whether you run from the confrontation. Like, if you said, Paul, I do it a different way, you and I will never have that argument. Well, I hope that you and I never have that argument again of our differences in approaches, right? Like, we just have a different approach. Cool. I hope I'd never say, because I already know who you are and what you're comfortable with. Cool. But the problem is, you'll never have that confrontation, right? Because you just admitted, nah, in every situation, I'm just going to nod. I'm just going, like, you don't have to say, hey, idiot, that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm going to spit on you. Or you can just say, that doesn't particularly make sense to me. Because that's what I say most of the time. Like, I tell you all the time, I am not, like, when I talk to you, of course I'm a little bit more over the top, especially when it's not a confrontational thing, right? It's just, we're talking shit and I'm being provocative and dramatic, but in real life, my whole family is Christian. So it's not like I'm out there telling them, hey, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, you're an idiot. But I will say that makes absolutely no sense. Can you explain to me how that works? Can you give me an example? Like, I talk as if I'm on the atheist experience. So I'm not drastically different than you in real life. I'm drastically different than you theoretically, because that's how I would like to talk to people. But all I'm saying with this whole free rider thought or conversation is, I think you should realize that you want to benefit from stuff that you are not willing to work for.
I disagree. And maybe you could call it backroom dealings or, the man behind the curtain. But I think that's the entire idea I have about this podcast, is not that there's not 1,000 of them out there and that there aren't 10,000 other individuals, talking or on soapboxes. But yeah, I hope to bring something at least slightly different and be able to talk about the things I think people need to think about, the way people should approach a subject and say, how do I get to a truth here, right? I don't want to teach people what to think, but I would love to say, hey, did it make sense that we approach this way? That we thought about this way? And maybe you and I are wrong. Maybe I'm wrong in a particular conclusion I reach, right? But that to me is way more important, and putting that out there is my way of fighting that fight. Yeah, I think it's different. Obviously, it's less confrontational than just being open about, anytime it happens in my real life, to say, yeah, you know what, I'm not on board with that, and that doesn't make any sense to me. Again, in my mind, I'm fighting, and you're saying you don't care, I'm assuming, but in my mind, I'm fighting that stigma of like, okay, you're an atheist, that's weird. And also, there's just, even the things like jokes where it's like, an atheist, that's the first thing you hear. I forget how the joke goes, but it's like an atheist and something else, and it's like, they tell you as soon as they enter the room, right?
Vegetarians, right?
Yeah, right? I hate that nonsense. I'm already starting from a position where someone's looking for a reason to be like, I shouldn't listen to this fucking prick, right? So yeah, if there's a way for me to do it through this podcast and anonymously for as long as we can be anonymous, then that's the way I want to do it.
Right. But I don't know. I guess I'm trying to be fair to that situation. Blah blah blah. It's almost like, oh yeah, I care about poor people, so I'm gonna throw a quarter out of this hot air balloon, and more than likely it'll hit a poor person.
It probably won't have the same impact I want it to.
Right, because at that night you might split that motherfucker's head open.
Pun intended.
But
yeah, I hear you. I do.
Right, and so once again, this is not really a criticism. It's just really just a me just sharing my opinion, right? Like,
totally fair. And I agree. Let's point out the hypocrisy, right? Because in the high, not of you, right, of the Christian or of the people who have preconceived notions or, you know, associate atheism with being less than, someone was already willing to say, I'm praying for you, right? Like, or prayers, or like, join me in prayer, or anything like that, right? The irony is that they're willing to put it out there. That's the quote first thing you heard from them too, right? There's no delay for them to let you know. It's just they're coming from a position where they think that that's the way the majority is. So it's no big deal to let everybody know you're on their team, right? But it's weird for an atheist minority to be like, hey, I'm an atheist, or I'm not on board with that. And then it's like, oh, here we go. Here's the atheist telling me who he is. Totally hypocritical. So I get it. But yeah, I think you're dealing with, unfortunately, someone who, I'm making this one archetypal person, but you're dealing with people who are looking for ways to defend themselves, looking for ways to not even think about it, right? When I think about talking, there's people that are close to me that are, you know, really, as you said, truly Christian, right? In their words, they were born that way and they want to die that way, right? They don't even want to entertain the thought of, should I examine what I believe? So I am careful about how I, you know, bob and weave and try to make a point or whatever.
Right, and I think you're ceding ground to them once again, some type of moral high ground, right? I think you spoke to it a little bit. You didn't speak to it. You spoke to a different version. I don't know if it's hypocrisy, because we're not saying that the same person who says, oh, atheists are always throwing the atheist thing out there is the same Christian who, you know, throws their Christianity out there. Although more than likely it's the case, right? More than likely it's the case, because Christians normally feel pretty comfortable. Although there are Christians out there who generally kind of keep it to themselves and are not in-your-face Christians, blah, 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 right? So cool. We don't even need to get into that. But that being said, the fact that you feel like you have to tiptoe around these fuck faces, they don't have to tiptoe around you. They don't have to say, oh, you know, when you say you're going to hell, when you say that's a sin, when you say your people, i.e. atheists, are the reason that society is where it is, lawlessness, lack of morality, like, you're allowing them to talk to you in a way that you refuse to talk to them.
I agree. Great points, right? Like, you wouldn't look at someone who was like, in the same way that someone goes to you, I'm going to pray for you. If someone was like, I'm going to rub my lucky rabbit foot for you when I get home. No one would think twice to be like, that's just weird. And the same thing, like, you'd avoid that conversation.
That's weird. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If I said that to a Christian, they'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
But yeah, right? Like, we don't bat an eye when someone says, or I'll say most people don't bat an eye when someone says, I'm praying for you.
I'm always batting eyes.
Yeah, no, I agree. But again, I have a very gray and ephemeral idea of what this podcast can accomplish. And I think it's, you know, one piece of a larger machine of other such efforts that try to get people to think, right? Try to get people to understand what it means to think.
Right. But are we really marketing ourselves as...
We're marketing ourselves as people who are willing to talk. I was thinking our tagline for our channel should be just two idiots blathering about anything. Yeah, I don't want to pin myself with a mission statement, because you know what's going to happen sooner than later.
I'm not advocating for a mission statement. I'm just saying that if we're not specifically talking about what do you call it?
Religion, atheism?
Religion, if we don't market ourselves that way, then nobody's gonna come here, saying, "Oh, you know what? Let me take a look at these guys." We're probably not gonna get a whole bunch of Christians, and if we do get Christians, they're gonna hear a couple of things, and then they're gonna turn off, which is fine, right? At the end of the day, the only people that you're gonna convert are people who are willing to be converted, whether they know it or not. Right, so all the people that we listen to, genetically modified skeptic or whatever his name is, and
I agree with you. You can name 20 more channels like that, Alex O'Connor and whoever else, right? But that's kind of why I like what we've done in the first episode. Like, we've been doing this for a long time. We started with that tweet about wokeness, right? Someone's going to tune in because, they find out that this show is just two guys talking about whatever. And we'll probably touch on religion a lot, but you come in for, I heard this funny bit they were telling us about this tweet where this lady was ranting about meat and wokeness or whatever. And then you end up in the conversation about the Bible is used as a tool, and if it's used as a tool incorrectly, you look stupid. And then, the gangster who was converted because he heard the voice of God, right? I don't want to hammer people with, I think of channels like Genetically Modified Skeptic. They're very, I don't want to call them formulaic, because they're good. They're very good at what they do. They have the subject matter. They're responding to something specific. They make very, very coherent and points that flow together also. But as you said, right, I don't see any. It would be super rare for a Christian to be like, let me see what Genetically Modified Skeptic has to say about this.
You know what? So here's where I don't know if it's a contradiction, but here's where I'll admit, and I think I've always admitted this, and I think I admitted the hard truth just now, right? So I'm not saying your way is the wrong way or the least effective way. I don't think I've ever said that, and I'm definitely not saying it now, right? What I'm saying is my personality, just like I hate workarounds. Like, either we're gonna do this the fair way, and you treat me the way I treat you, and vice versa, or we're not going to do it anyway, and I'm just going to keep it real and say how I really feel about this shit and hurt your feelings if I have to. Because at the end of the day, this is how I really feel anyway. You tell me how you really feel. You feel comfortable doing it throughout society. I look at it no differently than most other things in society, whether it be legal injustice, criminal injustice, social, ethnic injustice, blah, 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 blah. Financial injustice. It's all, listen, you're a piece of shit. And until you admit that you're a piece of shit and change your ways, I'm going to come at you real ugly. Now, that's a generalized way of my attitude towards religion in general. But like I said, if I bump into somebody on the street and I have a conversation with them, like, a lot of times I realize, if religion comes up, I'll be real honest, but I'll try to be extremely diplomatic. But I'll also be honest. I'm not going to say that, like, if somebody said to me, bro, come on. Jesus being resurrected, it's pretty amazing. You have to admit that.
There were eyewitnesses.
I would look at them like they're crazy and say, wait, you really think Jesus rose from the dead? Like, I would create that, foundation, right? So you believe that? Cool. Now, so you're like a crazy person.
But honestly, like, you're joking now, but where does that conversation go?
Oh, no. I'm joking now. So then I say, like, so you believe that based on what evidence? The Bible. So you believe the Bible. That like, you just got to go through the chain of custody, right? You believe the Bible. Cool. Everything in the Bible? No, not everything. Or, right, either way, whether you say you believe everything, because if you believe everything, then I'm going to take you to all the fucked up shit that I put on my t-shirts. And if you say I don't believe everything, then you go to the jackass part where, okay, so why do you know the truth versus the lies, versus the poetry, versus the, direct meanings? Like, you can't go anywhere, right? So we go through all of that, and we just get to a point where they just say, oh, we just have to agree to disagree.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. I don't know if that's a satisfactory ending to the conversation. Do you feel that way?
Well, it's not satisfactory. I mean, to me, it's not satisfactory because that's not how anything works. You don't agree to disagree that trickle-down economics doesn't fucking work.
There's plenty of people who would agree to disagree.
Right? No. But the people who think that who want it to work they only want it to work in my mind. They know for a fact it doesn't work because we see the numbers, right? Because the reason trickle down economics works in somebody's heads is because they want rich people to get all of that money and tax incentives and tax cuts and subsidies, right? And then it's like, oh, those are the same people who say majority of people are lazy. Poor people are just not lazy. They don't work hard enough. They're not smart enough. Whatever. Their parents were trash. Whatever. But when it comes to the rich people, like, well, let's give these rich people all this money, and more than likely they're gonna hire more people, and more likely they're gonna, pay their employees more. So we're gonna bank this financial policy on the thought and the hope of the goodwill of rich people, versus if it was the opposite, let's give this money to the poor people and they'll just buy stuff, and but they're gonna buy stupid stuff. We can't trust those fuckers.
I was literally just thinking that.
Like, the hypocrisy is there. It's palpable. It's almost mathematically provable. So we can't agree to disagree on trickle-down economics. We can't agree to disagree on fucking global warming. It's just you want to be where the fuck you are. You just want to be where you are. Ideologically.
Okay, and so those people, are you even considering reaching them? Or is it just like, no, that's a lost cause?
So yes is the answer, and at the end of the day, I try to hold people to their own standards, right? Like, I'm not going to use the same things that may have clicked in my brain. Like, I'm going to ask you how you do your thing. How do you run your career? How do you run your relationships? Like, do you just talk to God, or you do exactly what God tells you to do? Or in some situations, do you actually pay attention to your surroundings and you respond to your surroundings in a way that has some type of reason or logic? And if that's the case, you're cherry picking, right? Like, we can prove that you're cherry picking in your life. And what's the funny thing is, when you don't cherry pick, like, I'm sorry, not when you don't cherry pick, but when you do the kind of what everybody else would call the reasonable, rational thing in these other parts of your life, you get not perfect results, not always the desired result, but you get somewhat what's the word I'm looking for? Statistically predictable results. Versus whenever you do this God thing, somebody does a great video of it. It's either yes, no, or maybe. Always. But isn't that everything?
Yeah.
Like, when you don't get something, you're like, oh, I asked God for this thing and I didn't get it. Oh, it's because a classic meme. If you ask for God, if you ask something of God and they don't give it to you, it's because you didn't need it. It's not because He didn't want you to have it. It's because you don't even need it. It's a distraction from your real purpose. And how the fuck do you know my real purpose?
My special purpose.
Bro, it's scary, dude. Like, come on, man. So, no, I mean, how does the conversation go? It goes there. It gets to the point where I'm like, okay, cool. You just want to play the game. And I can't fuck with those people. I'll be real honest with you. In almost any part of life, which is why I don't know how I did it as long as I did. Because I dated Christians up until very much into my mid-30s. But then I was like, no, hell, I could not I can't biblically know somebody who knows the Bible. Well, I'm sorry, I couldn't biblically know somebody who believes the Bible. Because that shit, to me, you're capable of anything. You're like a bad guy in a cartoon. You like you're trying to build a rocket to blow up half of the planet or something. I don't know. So, yeah, I mean, I don't look at this channel as an opportunity to touch people from that standpoint, right? For me, this exercise is just, it spans all subject matters and situations, and maybe not all, but right. So we would definitely talk about history and politics and economics and stuff like that. We talk about stuff like inflation, like the shit I called you about the other day. But Do I think that any Christian would listen to this and have a positive, fuzzy feeling about maybe listening? I mean, once again, if you're willing to listen to people's arguments, you don't have to really love exactly how they're saying it. And like I said, so on this channel, it's a little bit different because I am kind of being myself and being a little bit more bombastic than normal. Not than normal, but being more bombastic than I would if I were truly having a one-on-one conversation with somebody who truly was trying to share ideas with me. So, I mean, maybe that's something I can take away and say, hey, don't be as bombastic, and maybe people will feel comfortable having a conversation with you. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't mind you taking the approach you take, right? Like, I don't know what I'm doing is right. I agree there's a lot of merit to the point that, okay, I literally never have that conversation with anybody. Imagine we don't start this podcast. I don't broadcast my feelings to anyone but you, let's say, and my wife and whoever else. But just those closest to me. Then what do I change? Nothing. That's a fantastic point. I can't argue that. So yeah, the world needs more people who can be forward. I'm not there yet. Maybe it's the opposite, right? Maybe it'll get me to the point where I say, you know what, enough of this nonsense. I can at least be honest to be like, thanks, but save your prayers. It doesn't really mean anything to me.
Right. So I think that would be awesome, to be honest, when people say have a blessed day or whatever. I don't know about a blessed day, right? So, because that's so in passing. They're not really trying to have an exchange with you. But if you say, yeah, I stubbed my toe, or yeah, there's a boot on my car, and they're like, hey, pray for me, or I'm going to pray for you. And I was like, I would just ask this, and what is that going to do? Well, God is going to hear me. And, so God does what you tell him to do? Well, no. Well, then why are you doing it? Like, you hope that something triggers the whole. I don't have to prove to you that God doesn't exist. I'm not trying to prove to you that God doesn't exist. I'm trying to prove to you that you're a moron. There's a difference. Right? There's a difference between God doesn't exist and you're a moron. Like, thinking that you can, thinking that there's a God, and then it's not the craziest thing you're doing. The craziest thing you're doing is thinking that there's a God and you can change that nigga's mind.
And we talk about it all the time. Where was he when the boot went on my car? Where was he before I parked there? Where was he, this morning?
Bro, he put the boot on because he wanted Steve to be friends with Paul. Like, that's how he got Steve and Paul together. And just instead of just saying, hey, yo, Steve, go talk to Paul. Yeah. He put a boot on my car so Paul could. I'm sorry, I'm Paul. He put a boot on my car so Steve could walk by and, notice and be a good Samaritan.
Right.
Man, the rigmarole that you have to go through is...
That's what I was talking about earlier. Exactly, right? Like,
fantastic.
You start there and you work backwards to there.